Okay, good evening. So welcome to the Erev Yom Kippur Shir. Two ideas I'd like to focus on this evening. If you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com. I'll send you the handout, and feel free to press follow and share the shir if you enjoy it. I want to begin with something I saw in a lovely sefer by Rabbi Judah Michel. I don't know if you've heard of him or you've seen the sefer. There's a sefer called Baderech. I received it a couple of months ago as a gift, and I started looking through it, and there's some fabulous ideas in it. And he tells the following story, which I think is very pertinent to Yom Kippur. He tells the story of someone called Menachem Mendel Futerfas. Now he is a very interesting personality. He's no longer alive. He was incarcerated in a Siberian gulag for many years, and after many years he actually was released, and he came to England. He came here to London. He had a challenging life. He never lost a daughter in a car accident. Anyway, he was in Brooklyn, and then he went to Eretz Yisrael in Kfar Chabad. And he was a mashpia, and he would fabreng with his talmidim, and often he would tell stories about his experiences in the gulag. And he tells about the following story. One time it happened to him that he was there in Siberia, and of course there were loads of other people there. It wasn't just Jewish people. There were the Russians would send criminals there, and petty thieves and crooks. And those were his companions. And these people would while away the endless hours by playing cards. And Rabbi Futerfas would observe this. And he would see that, of course, this was against prison regulations. They weren't allowed to. And the guards would try and come in and catch them in the act and take away the cards and punish them. But they could never catch them. They knew they were playing cards. They would come in, they would search, they couldn't find anything. And one time, they sort of burst in, they did a full body search on every prisoner, but they couldn't find the cards. And Rabbi Futerfas couldn't understand it. He saw them playing cards, and he didn't know how they did it. And he asked some of the criminals, he said, how did you do it? What happened to the pack of cards? And eventually one of them told him the secret. And they said the following: you see, we are all pickpockets and petty thieves. When we hear the guards coming, we quickly collect the cards, and as the guard walks into the cell or into the building, into the room, we quickly put the pack of cards into his pocket. And then he searches everyone, can't find them, and just before he leaves, we retrieve them. And says Rabbi Futerfas, I learned from that people check everyone else's pockets, but they don't check their own. And I think this is a perfect segue when it comes Erev Yom Kippur. We should not be too concerned about other people, certainly not being judgmental in a situation where you can't, give teichacha or whatever. Then I think the focus should begin at home. And we should check our own pockets. Where do we begin? Perhaps we begin with the famous Rabbi ben Dudaya, one of the most famous Baalei Tshuva in Jewish history. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah Yud Zayin tells the story. Amru alav al Rabbi ben Dudaya, the first box. He was such a promiscuous person that there wasn't a zoina, a woman of ill repute, that he didn't visit. He once heard that there was a zoina far away, and she took an exorbitant amount of money for her services. He crossed over 7 seas to go and visit this lady. And at the moment when he was going to do the Aveira, he sort of released some breath. And she said, just like that breath will never return to its source, so too you, Elazar ben Dudaya, will never do tshuva. That triggered his sort of a feeling of tshuva. He decided his life was empty. He was living a life of lustful abandonment, and he wanted to do tshuva. So Yoshev ben Shnei Harim v'Gvois, he went and sat between mountains. Omar Harim v'Gvois big shalei rachmim, please the mountains, beg for mercy for me. My life has been wasted, and I've done so many averas. Omru loi od shanim mevakshim olech nevakesh lasmeinu. No, basically they didn't help. Omar Shamayim v'Oretz big shalei rachmim. He turned to the heavens and the earth. Chama v'Levona. He turned all to sort of the cosmos, and he turned to the heavenly bodies to try and help him to no avail. Eventually he said, Omar ein hadova tolu elebi. At the end of the day, the buck stops with me. He sort of put his head between his knees, v'gar b'vchia, and he cried and cried, ad sheyotza nishmosa, until his soul expired. Yotza baskol v'amro, Rabbi Elazar ben Dudaya, muzman l'chayil mabo. Rabbi Elazar ben Dudaya is invited to the world to come. Bacha Rebbe, when Rebbe heard about this, he cried, v'amar yesh koina ilome b'shua b'kamashonim, a person can acquire his life, his world to come, in other words, with many years of hard work. The yesh koina ilome b'shua achas, and a person can acquire his life, his world to come, his world, b'shua achas, in one moment. V'amar Rebbe, okay, etc., etc. That's the Gemara. Interestingly, Rabbi Elazar ben Dudai, when he wanted to do tshuva, his starting point was to look to sort of external help. And he sort of pointed the finger elsewhere. He said, it's the heavens and the earth and the mountains, etc. What did he mean by that? He tried to point his fingers elsewhere to say that it's not really my fault. It's my environment, it's my parents, it's my society, it's my high school Rebbe, it's 1,000 things, but it's not me. All to no avail. Eventually he said, Ein hadava tolu elabi. The buck stops with me. So I think that's an important lesson from there. But I'll tell you something, perhaps, by the way, the Rambam, when the Rambam paskins in the beginning of Hilchos Tshuva, afilu rosh kol yom v'osa tshuva b'achrona, you can have a wicked person his whole life, ein mazkirin lo shum dava mirishay, nothing of his wickedness is mentioned. Maybe this is the source of the Rambam's halacha. Now, when Rebbe heard this, he cried, and he said, Yesh koina ilama b'kamashonim, a person can acquire his world to come with hard work for many years, and yesh koina ilama b'shua achas. Rav Kook, in his Sefer Orot HaTshuva, Rav Michel quotes it, says a very interesting thing. Yesoida shel tshuva, the real foundation of all of tshuva, b'mekaira, in its essence, in its source, Nema Olav, is basically rooted in a pasuk in Tehillim. The pasuk says in Tehillim, Kirchoik Mizrach Mima'arov, as distant as east is from west, Hirchik Mimenu es Psho'enu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has distanced our averas, our transgressions from us. Says Rabbi Michel, what does that mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu distances our averas as distant as east is from west. The distance between east and west is unquantifiable. East is just a direction. So what does that mean? If it's unquantifiable, it's irrelevant. What does it mean? So perhaps we can explain the following. The Magid of Mezrich says the following. The word sha'ah can also mean to turn. Mitzvah Hashem, Shabbos Bereshis will learn about Cain and Hevel. So Cain and Hevel bring korbanos to Hashem, and the pasuk says, "Vayisha Hashem el Hevel ve'el minchasei," that HaKadosh Baruch Hu turns to the Hevel and to his gift, ve'el Cain ve'el minchasei lo sha'ah, but to Cain and his gift he did not turn. Lo sha'ah means he didn't turn. We can now re-understand our Gemara. Yesh koine olamai b'sha'ah achas. A person can acquire his world to come with one turn. He just has to turn away, redirect his focus, and with that he can be koine olamai. That's what it means. That's what the Rav Kook means. Kirchig mizrach mimarav hirchig menes pshoinu. East and west. If a person just does a 180-degree turn, he's turned his back on past misdemeanors. That's what it means. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it were, he sort of distances our averas from us like east to west. We've turned our back on it. That's what it means, sha'achas. Michel uses the analogy of the new Shabbos lamp. You know what I mean? You know the new innovative Shabbos lamp? The kosher lamp. So you can't use electricity on Shabbos, so you put it on before Shabbos, but you don't want it on in your room the whole time. So you've got a very clever twisting mechanism. You want it off, you just twist it. You want it on, you just twist it and you expose the bright light to the hole in the cover. We start off every day by saying very proudly and optimistically, Elokai neshama shenasata bi tahiri. We believe that we're pure, we're holy. Sometimes we get caught up in the nonsense of life and we do things which we regret. All we need to do is just shoah achas, a little twist of that Shabbos lamp, and you're exposing the bright, illuminating light that is the neshama, that who we really are. That's what it means. Yesh koina elonu b'shua achas. So I think Rabbi Elazar ben Dodaya is a good sort of starting point when it comes to tshuva and thinking about how to improve ourselves. Like Rabbi Michel says, from a mental futafas, the starting point is to check our own pockets. And how do we do it? We consider our ways, and yesh koina elonu b'shua achas, with one twist, with one turn, then we can redirect our focus and turn our back on past indiscretions. Okay, let's move on to another idea. The following idea, some of it I heard from Aryeh Leibowitz. He had a very interesting drasha before Slichus, and some of the questions, which I'm going to start with, I've taken from there. In short, he asked 3 questions. The whole sort of the journey of tshuva began on the first night of Slichus. Maybe some people started in Elul, but the first night of Slichus is when we begin in earnest. We start off at the very beginning of Slichus, and in fact we do it at the beginning of each Slichus by saying, L'cha Hashem staka, v'lonu boishes haponim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you are the righteous one, and you have charity, and we're just embarrassed. Lo b'chesed v'lo b'masim bono lefanecha. We're not coming to you with great acts of chesed and of good deeds. Kedalim v'choroshim dofaknu d'losecha. We're coming knocking on the door, impoverished like paupers. So we approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu as destitute. The trouble is that the starting point? Shouldn't the starting point be not that we haven't got good actions and we haven't got lots of ma'asim tovim, but we've done a bunch of things which are wrong? That's the starting point. We've spoken a lot of Lashon Hara. Our Shmir Shabbos hasn't always been what it should be. Our kashrus maybe isn't what it should be. We should list our aveiros first. It's not the void of ma'asim tovim that is the problem. It's the errors that we've made. That's the starting point, surely, of tshuva. Question number 1. Question number 2. The haftarah for a fast day on Monday was Tzom Gedalia. The haftarah for the afternoon of a fast day, a beautiful psukim from Yeshayahu Novi. The pasuk says, "Dirshu Hashem b'motzoi," the bottom box. "Dirshu Hashem b'motzoi kra'uhu b'yesukarav." Seek out Hashem wherever He is found, which is these days. Karo b'yesukarav, and call out to Him when He's close, which, like I say, is aseres me'tshuva. Ya'azov rosha darka v'ishav v'machshavosav. A person should abandon his ways. V'ishav v'machshavosav v'yoshav Hashem v'yirachameu, etc., etc. And then the Novi goes on and gives a metaphor of rain. The pasuk says, "Ki kashe yerid hageshem v'asheleg ma'ashamayim." When rain and snow fall from the heaven, v'shama lo yoshuv, it's not going to go straight back up. Ki im hirves haaretz. What does rain do? It sort of quenches the ground, v'hilida, and then the ground gives birth to things, v'tzmicha v'nosen zera lezareya v'lechem la'oichel, and it produces bread and grain and etc., etc. Kain yiyeh dvarai, so too says HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be my words. Asher yetzi mipi lo yoshev olei reikam ki im also es asher chofasi v'tzliach asher shalachtiv. And you do what I sent you out to do. Now that's a strange metaphor. Why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, through the Novi, telling us that tshuva is like rain? Wouldn't a better metaphor be, I gave you something and you broke it, now get it fixed. You crashed your car, take it to the mechanic, get it fixed. Why? What's the analogy of rain? That it comes down, it doesn't go back up, it actually quenches the ground and it produces fruit. What does that mean? Third question. On the night of Rosh Hashanah we say this, a famous kapitel Tehillim, Perek Chavdalad, Naki Chapayim, a person who is an honest person, Ubar Levov, he has a pure heart, Asher lo nosa lashov nafshi, that hasn't carried his soul in vain. The Chovetz Chaim asks a simple question. If a person is honest and he has a pure heart, then obviously he has not carried his soul in vain. His neshama is doing something pretty good. If he is an honest person with a pure heart, then obviously lo nosa lashov nafshi. What exactly does that mean? So we have 3 questions. Question number 1, what does it mean? Why do we begin slichas that we are destitute, we're lacking in mitzvahs and in ma'asim tovim? Surely we should begin by saying we've done a bunch of aveiros. Question number 2, why the analogy of the metaphor of rain? And question number 3, the Chovetz Chaim's question, when it says in the Ki Chapayim, a person is honest, a Bar Levov with a pure heart, He hasn't carried his soul in vain. Well, obviously, if he's an honest person, then obviously he hasn't carried his soul in vain. What does that mean? The answer to these three questions is found in lots of different sources. Each one says it in a slightly different way. This is the way the Sfas Emes says it. This is the Sfas Emes, his Shabbos Shuvah Drosha of Tov Reish Nun Aleph, which is 130 odd years ago. So what is that? 1890 or something, around then. Says the Sfas Emes. Ika, very powerful and sobering words. Ika HaTshuva, the main focus of our tshuva should be Lesakein hashlichus shenishtalech ha'adam la'olam hazeh, to complete the mission for which a person was sent down to this world. And then he quotes the psukim from Yeshayahu, Kasher Yerid HaGeshem HaShenig, etc. VaHaKadosh Baruch Hu nosen b'chol ish Yisrael devarim shetzarich le'tzion ba'olam mikoyach el ha'poel. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given each person opportunities, talents, wherewithal to create actual things from potential. He's given each person a mission in life. La'asos bohem peiros. Va'oz yoshav b'shlichusoi lefonav yisbarach. And then, after 120 years, he can go back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu having fulfilled his mission. Now, imagine, the Chavetz Chaim gives a mashal. Imagine someone comes to you, a guy comes to me and says, look, Rabbi, I need to borrow money, I'm starting a business. My father always used to joke, he used to say, I said to him, how much do you need? I need £100,000. So my father would say, okay, tell him, he'll say, he'll call one of his kids, call one of us, and he'll say, go upstairs, under my bed there are 2 boxes. Get the small one and give it to this gentleman. Right? So imagine I come down with a box, I've marked £100,000 notes. And then marked, I can see exactly each note, exactly which is what. I give him the money, and I say, we're going to write a contract, and in a year's time, he's going to come back with that, he's going to repay the loan. He comes back a year later, and he gives me the box. I open it up, it's exactly the same money. I say, well, what have you done with it? No, I hear you, I'm returning the loan. But why didn't you invest it? Why didn't you buy stock? Why didn't you sell? I lent it to you in order that you could do something with it. There are 2 expressions for a loan in halacha. One is a she'ela and one is a halva'ah. What's the difference between the two? They're both loans. A she'ela means I'm lending you something, but I want the actual thing back. So for example, I lend you my car. If I'm going away for Sukkot, can you borrow my car? With pleasure. So I lend you a Honda Accord, and after Sukkot you come back and you give me a Toyota Camry. But I want my car back. Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. No, but a she'ela means you give me back what I lent you. A halva'ah it's a milva lohitzah nitna. It's actually there to spend. So I don't want the exact same money back. I just want the equivalent back. This is a halva'ah. If we give back the same thing to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he gave us, it's futile. The lender will be furious. So you've wasted my time, you've wasted my £100,000 for a whole year. That is really what's going on. Even though we can be in this world for 70, 80, 120 years, but if we don't fulfill our shlichus, we're no better than this person who's taken £100,000 and just given it back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we can sort of live a life. We haven't corrupted our neshama, but that's not enough. We actually have to fulfill a shlichus. So now we can understand the answer to all 3 questions. We approach HaKadosh Baruch Hu as destitute. When we say lo b'chesed v'lo b'masim banu lefanecha, we're saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we haven't yet fulfilled our shlichus in this world. You've given us opportunities, you've given us the gift of life, you've given us so many talents and abilities and a shlichus, and I haven't yet done enough. I haven't yet fulfilled my shlichus. That's what we're saying. And in a way, that's the biggest indictment against us. What is the metaphor of rain? That's exactly what Yeshayahu is saying. When the rain comes down, it's quenching the ground and it's producing something. That's what we're meant to do. We're meant to take our gifts of life, our opportunities, our experiences, our wherewithal, our talents, abilities, and do something with them. That's exactly the point. That's exactly what he's saying. You're meant to use the rain and nurture the talents that you've been given, l'shem shamayim. What about the Chovetz Chaim's kasha, Nikicha Paim Uval Levov? That's exactly the point. It's not enough just to have an honest hand and a pure heart, because if you haven't fulfilled your shlichus, lo nosa lashov nafshi. A person's got to not carry his soul in vain. He's got to do something with his neshama. That's exactly the point. In the Pnei Rabbi in Yecheskel, which is stories and anecdotes about Dayan Abramsky. So he says over there, look at the second last box of the page. He says about Dayan Abramsky, he would speak a lot about the ultimate din v'cheshbon that each of us will face. The main focus of our attention after, please God, a long and happy life in this world, the unique mission that he or she was given, but he didn't properly fulfill it. That's the main din v'cheshbon. You know, any parent or educator realizes this instinctively. I'll give you a mashal. On Rosh Hashanah, I was walking home from shul, and my wife and I just sort of overtook this younger couple, and we overheard the mum was saying to this 5 or 6 year old boy, whatever his name was, Moshe, you behaved so beautifully in shul, you sat there so nicely, quietly. And I just said to him, I said, well done Moshe, please God by me. Right? But of course it was a joke, I hope I did sit nicely in shul. But you praise a 5-year-old for sitting in shul nicely, but if the guy is 25, he doesn't need the same praise that you're expected of him. Well, so too if you've got 2 children, they have different expectations for each child. Each child is different. And therefore, every person is judged not according to the next guy, but according to your own standards, your own potential. That's exactly the point. You know, Rabbi Leibowitz quoted Rebbetzin Henkin. I don't know if you remember, some years ago, there was a terrible tragedy, a terrorist atrocity, where she lost, I think, her husband and a child. And afterwards, she was asked about it, and she said something astonishing. She said, I never believed that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives out prizes. Every single person has a tafkid in life. Sometimes it's pleasant, and sometimes it's not. And she said the family Henkin understood this was their tafkid. I didn't ask for it, and it's not a pleasant tafkid, but this was their tafkid. And every single person has that. The Lubavitcher Rebbe famously was very big into celebrating birthdays. Yeah, not just to have cake and a party. What was the Lubavitcher Rebbe's comment? He used to say, your birthday is the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided the world can't be without you any longer. Your birthday is the day that celebrates the fact that the world cannot be without you any longer. In other words, you're here for something. The world needs you. Everyone's got a unique mission in this world. Rabbi Twersky says a beautiful pshat in the Posuk in Ashrei. Normally we understand that to mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's glory, to show mankind the glory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says Rabbi Twersky, no, this is typical Rabbi Twersky, who's written 80 books with one theme of self-esteem, just in different genres of Hasidic stories or psychological insights or whatever it is. Let people know your glory, i.e. of your human being. Let people know your glory, and then then you'll see the glory of Hashem's Malchus. In other words, if you fulfill your potential, then the full symphony of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Malchus will come into play. And I think this also answers another question. At the very end of Ne'ilah, it's when you look at it and you think about it, it's perplexing and shocking. The whole of Elul, the whole of Rosh Hashanah, the whole of Aseret Tshuva, the whole of Yom Kippur is building up to the final tefillah of Ne'ilah. You know, even the hardest of criminals would have been worn down by then. And you're then ready to say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm sorry. Al Chet, Al Shamnu, etc. And you look in Ne'ilah, and there's no Al Chet. Where's the Al Chet in Ne'ilah? Do you know what we say instead of Al Chet? V'atiten lanu Hashem Elokeinu b'yaves Yom HaKippur mazeh keitzu mechilo slicha kol avonoseinu leman nechtal me'oshek yodeinu, so that we can take our hands away from our oppression. V'noshav elecho lasas chukeres unecha b'leiv hasholem. It says Rav Shraga 5 of Mendelovitz, you know what this is referring to? The greatest theft of all is the fact that we haven't used the talents that you've given us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the opportunities to do our mission in life. That's it. That's really what it boils down to. I'll finish with this. 2 points. I've used this analogy before, but I think it brings it out. A person's about to do their art A-level exam, their final art exam. And you've got 10 hours, you've got your canvas, and the invigilator comes in and says, this is what you've got to do. You've got to paint a beautiful autumnal scene with rolling hills and beautiful trees. And they give you the colors that you need, the browns and the greens, etc. All the different shades. You've got 10 hours, go ahead, paint your masterpiece. If halfway through you say, where are the yellows, where are the blues? But you don't need yellow, you don't need blue. You've given exactly the colors you need to paint your masterpiece. That's what it's about. And therefore, we need to just develop the koiches, the talents that we have been given to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And final point, we shouldn't underestimate our ability. Pesach Krohn came to school last week, and he spoke beautifully as ever, and he mentioned one interesting insight, not a Torah thought. He said his whole talk was Torah, but he said just one ha'ara which I thought is worth sharing. Roger Bannister. Here in the UK, we're familiar with the name. Who was Roger Bannister? He was the first person to break the 4-minute mile. Yeah, he ran a mile in under 4 minutes. In fact, it was 3 minutes, 59.4 seconds. And he did that on May the 6th in 1954, which means from Sheishes Yemei Bereshis until 1954, no one ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Like Krohn said, maybe Naftali was very fast, so maybe he was the exception. But apart from him, not a single person ran a mile in under 4 minutes until May the 6th, 1954. Amazingly, within I think 40-something days, somebody else did. And within the year, 4 people had run a 4-minute mile. Now, since 1954, 70 years or so later, over 20,000 people have achieved this, including athletes as young as 16 years old. So what's the take-home from this? Perhaps the take-home is that psychologically, there are barriers. 4 minutes, no one can run a mile under 4 minutes. One person does it, all of a sudden, the barriers are down. We shouldn't impose limitations on our aspirations. We should aim high. We should aim, the world is our oyster. We should try and fulfill the potential and aim high. The sky is the limit. And ultimately, this is really what I think this second idea that we've spoken about is saying. From Slichas to Ne'ilah, from the very beginning, we're talking about our Shlichus in this world. Our job is to fix and to do our unique mission in life. And that's why the metaphor of rain is used. It's a very apt metaphor. And that's what the Apostle means, says the Chavetz Chaim. The Kichapam of our Levov is not enough. We've got to be people who don't carry our soul in vain. We've got to use our neshama, use our opportunities properly. So, Mitzvah Hashem, with all of these ideas, we should all be zocher for a Gemar Chasima Tova.